says that.
Are we ready?
I am.
Okay.
Just figured do it Friday because trying to do it in the afternoon, everybody's got acclimated, you know.
Okay, ready? We will call to order a special board meeting for the Board of Election Commissioners for the City of Chicago. Good morning. My name is Marisel Hernandez. I'm the chairwoman. Seated to my right is Commissioner William Kresse, and to my left is Commissioner Jonathan Swain. Next on the agenda is the consideration of the agenda. Are there any changes? If not, we'll proceed to the next item. We have no minutes to approve at this time. So we will go on to the next item, which is the Executive Director's report. Mr. Gough.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Just to let the board members know that everything seems to be going well. It is election time, it's nerve-wracking, but the staff is doing an excellent job. We have gotten, excuse me, Mr. Allen, quick question. Thursday, what time we shutting the online absentee system? Vote by mail.
5 p.m. sharp.
5 p.m. sharp. Okay, very good. Okay. I just want the board members to be aware of that. Just to let you know, Thursday is cutting it close. I've tried a couple of times to have that Thursday pushed back to either Monday or Tuesday, but even if we got an application at 5 o'clock on Thursday, we process it as quickly as possible. There is a chance that they may not get it on election day because of the problems with the mail. So I just, you know, I've warned everybody. We told them, in fact, I've made statements to make sure you get that application early so we can get that vote by mail to you. We've been very lucky that 3X Data has been turning those things around as quickly as they have. In fact, they caught up with all the mail. In fact, they had the one Sunday they took off because they have caught up with all the mail. So they've done a real good job, but you're putting something on people that it may be impossible to do because we don't have control of the post office. Is there a disclaimer on the website when they apply that says if you're applying after this date that there may not be there's a possibility you might not get your ballot due to the postal system?
There is a message on there that we strongly encourage applying by earlier mid-October so that you have enough time to receive and return your ballot. We can't change the deadline, but we did, including in our mailing, our household mailing. It said apply as quickly as possible.
Have you been doing it at social media as well?
We can add that. It's starting to taper off right now in terms of the applications.
Right. But I think just
we
fair warning.
Yeah.
And then you can also let them know that if they don't receive the ballot, they could still vote.
Go to early vote.
Right.
Yeah. Just to let you know that I have gotten questions on that on Facebook, and let them know that I suggest to make sure you get your ballot done, do it right now. So it's something that we need to really take a closer look at, especially the post office is closing more and more processing plants. So it's something to look at.
Just one thing that came up in conversation the other day. On social media, let's emphasize, since we've been pushing so much with the early vote, you can vote at any of the locations. But then on election day, you have to go to your precinct.
Yes, we're already running into some interesting things. I'll get back to that.
Okay.
But in my segment of the report. But.
Okay.
But the numbers are high, the returns are looking good. We sent out an email reminding everybody who did receive their ballot, please complete it, mail it back to us as soon as possible. So everything seems to be going well. I know Charles will be giving counts on where we are with vote by mail and other items, but we're doing very well.
Thank you. Mr. Halliday?
Good morning, Madam Chairman, fellow commissioners. Well, our registrations are done. We're getting calls from some of the online applicants. Those that we can resolve over the phone, we resolve those. And the others, we direct them to the early voting sites. So with the early voting sites, as far as grace period, as of today, we've we registered 548. Of those, 278 are new, and 270 are change of addresses. Early voting totals, as of yesterday, 14,195 have voted early. Thursday, we'll be doing our public tests of the equipment on the 6th floor in the computer room. Our warehouse deliveries of equipment are on schedule. I'm working with the staff and purchasing to keep things moving there. Poll book testing is working fine, and the staff is just readying themselves for next Tuesday.
Can you go back to early vote number again?
Yes, 14,195.
Is that yesterday's?
Yes, that's
total?
yesterday's number.
Oh.
This one day,
Yesterday's, I'm
this
sorry.
one day.
That's yesterday's number.
Yeah,
Okay.
We're up around 90,000.
Yeah.
I can give you.
Okay.
okay.
So the exact number is 86,975.
And we have polling places all determined at this point in our last meeting?
We're 4 vacancies right now,
Okay,
and those will be taken care of hopefully today.
very good.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Holliday. Mr. Anna?
Morning. So, yeah, today we're on pace to do about 15,000 at early voting. The first 80 minutes, we had 2,000. The website, we're having an issue that we haven't had in the past 12 years of having early voting and election day voting, where people are actually showing up at polling places, election day polling places, expecting it to be an early voting site. So they're taking the voter information for election day, and they're showing up at for example, near here, there's a hotel that we use, and I heard from the manager yesterday that he's had at least 12 voters, and he had a voting, an online program that promotes voting, call him and say, well, you're an early voting site, and we want to know your hours. He said, no, we're not. So we're having to clarify on our polling place list now. We're going to, that these are only sites for November 6th, and have a link on there for early voting sites. The mailing, the household mailing, landed Friday. Saturday over Friday, we did 21% more. So the mailing is clearly still our most effective tool for communicating with voters. And then Sunday was very strong. We did 10 times as many this Sunday as we did 4 years ago at the midterm. We did about 6,000 compared to 673 4 years ago. The messaging for Election Day, getting back to your point about the number of vote by mail, right now we're focusing on having instructions here at Election Central to help inform judges what to do when people walk in with their vote by mail ballots or their relatives' vote by mail ballots, trying to drop them off at their polling place. So we're going to have to try to drill that home on Monday at our pre-election news conference, which I believe will be at 9:30 a.m. at the Loop Super Site. And we'll try to message that through the weekend, what to do with vote by mail ballots if you haven't returned them already. So that's all I have for now.
Could I just make a comment? The mailing worked real well, but the mailing, some people had their mailing and went to their polling place and didn't look at up above where the early vote was and where their polling place was. They didn't read.
Right.
So that was some of the confusion. And we've had that before, so it's nothing super. But
How many vote by mail?
Vote by mail applications, we're currently at about 108,000 if you add in the military overseas, so, or I believe 110,000 if you add those together. So we're probably going to close in right about that 1944 all-time record, so 116,000, somewhere around there.
Would we want to consider for future elections providing election day polling places with a sign with the listing of the early voting spots, so if people show up, they can just point at the sign?
Well, where would that be posted?
At all of the election day polling places, put a sign out front saying, this is not an early voting site.
Well, we
There they
do,
are.
we do a mailing to every polling place that has the information where their, what precinct or ward this polling place is. But that mailing doesn't usually hit till 3 or 4 days before the election. So that's something,
Yes, if
we
this
can
becomes a
look
problem.
at it, but, you know,
To help them out, you know.
I understand. We'll work on that. One other item that I forgot, Laurel is no longer with us, but who's taking her place is Amanda, what's Amanda's? Robledo. Hey, Amanda. I wanted to introduce Amanda. Amanda's been at the, purchasing for a while. She's a very, very intelligent woman, and she's working with Charles, myself, and Adam to make sure everything is done.
Sherry Zabel's in that office with her too, and Sherry's been in the purchasing department for a while, so we've got, thank goodness we've got some good staff in there to help us out until we find a permanent replacement.
Okay, well, thank you, Amanda, for everything.
Jim, can you give us a sense of comparison between of early vote as of end of day yesterday compared to 2014?
We're 62% ahead of where we were in 2014. We're only about half as many as we were in 2016, which is a presidential and normally a lot higher than a midterm. So it's hard to read the tea leaves, and we put out to the news media, don't bet your lunch money on what the turnout will be. This all reflects growing acceptance, comfort with vote by mail and early voting. I wouldn't read into it that we're going to have 62% more turnout.
These are mostly normal voters who are just opting for the early voting as opposed to.
Well, all our voters are normal.
Well, let's call them, what do they call them?
Regular
Polling,
voters.
Regular voters, or active voters.
To be honest, I haven't been able to do any analysis
Right.
as far as how often these voters typically participate, and who the ones who have applied to vote by mail or early vote. That's kind of a post-election activity that we could do, and we'll be able to learn more then.
Sure.
I'll try to put together some numbers.
Also, just from, what we've seen so far, and we've talked about this before, due to the length of the ballot for this election, approximate time it's taking voters in the early voting sites to vote an entire ballot?
Well, I don't know if it's because voters are perhaps not voting the entire ballot on the touchscreen, but we haven't had so far long lines or people expressing frustration with taking 12, 14 minutes through the ballot. The touchscreen takes longer than voting the paper ballot, but I think we would have more at early voting if not for the vote by mail activity, which is way up. That's triple what we were of 2014, and it's already exceeded 2016. So vote by mail, we're already
I was just getting
taking away from the early voting.
I was just wanting to get a handle of how long are we going to have long lines at polling places on election day
Well,
because it takes so long.
But it's also a factor of whether you come prepared,
And also, just remember, there's more paper in a polling place than it is, there's only
Right.
one touch screen.
I understand.
So you're gonna, it's easier, it's a lot quicker to vote by paper than on the touch screen, because on the touch screen, it makes you review your ballot. So I think you'll see. I did some studies real quick the other day when I went and voted on Sunday, and it looked like it was 8 minutes on average for the half hour I was there. I mean, people actually knew what they wanted, and they went in and made their choices and got out, so.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. We'll go on to old business, which is infrastructure projects and changes in election administration and voting equipment, and that is proceeding.
We hope to have that taken care of right after the April election.
Okay.
There is a question I'd like to ask of the board. I did send an amendment or an addendum to the latest draft of the updated report, and I didn't know if we could possibly get authorization to go ahead and publish yet on the website the updated long-range plan.
You know what, can we tackle that next week?
Yes.
Because I do have to review it again.
Yeah, so do I.
And, but I think that's an excellent idea and, for discussion and to see if it can be published at this time. Okay?
When you say next week, or the meeting after the
No,
election?
we could do it next week.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm just thinking, after the election, we have some more experience to look at it. Well, let's take it.
At the very least, we could start discussing it, and then if we need to, we can always.
Sounds good.
Postpone till the following week, you know,
Right.
based on our perspective and recommendations, okay? Okay. Electronic poll books, I think Mr. Holliday provided us with an update. Judd, anything else?
I just got an update from Sue Casey. The logic and accuracy testing at the warehouse should wrap up today, and we haven't encountered any issues, so all is well.
Okay,
Beautiful.
thank you. Mr. Lasker, is there anything new on the legislative side?
There's been no progress. The veto session begins in November, and we are watching a couple bills that were vetoed, so we'll get there eventually.
Okay, I'll keep an eye on that. Under new business, we have a removal of, recommendation for removal of Judge of Election Ava Ruffin. Mr. Lasker, or?
We have Ms. Agnew
Ms. Agnew?
present on this.
Good morning, Commissioners. This is kind of an odd situation where this is a judge who was found to, or she appeared to one of our trainers to be intoxicated during training. And normally the progress of appointing and confirming a judge is that you would have them trained, then we go to court for the confirmation. In this situation, because of this is a whole new training period and a new confirmation period, she actually had already been confirmed prior to training. So the manager of that department, Audra Lewicki, had asked that I have her removed permanently, and I explained to her that that would have to go in front of the board since she had already been confirmed. So Ms. Morrison, who is a long-term employee here, found Ms. Ruffin. When she approached her, they were having difficulties with her, and at the very beginning of class, she smelled alcohol, and Ms. Ruffin to her had very slurred speech. So she had reported that to Ms. Lewicki.
Are there any questions?
Nope.
If none, is there a motion to approve the removal of Judge of Election Ava Ruffin based upon the information we have received and observed?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes and Ms. Ruffin is removed. Next item is two judges of election, a post-hearing removal. Ms. Agnew?
The first judge up is Carol Contreras, who was, oddly enough, she had been calling someone down here, I don't know if you remember, back in March, complaining about the other judges. And when our investigator went out, he found out that she was the one causing a disturbance in the polling place. So we, this went in front of you last March for her removal. She asked for reconsideration of that, so she was afforded a full hearing, at which point the hearing officer, Jean Brown, sustained or recommended that your initial removal be sustained. And I will have to say, based on the witnesses I had there, I absolutely agree with her and would ask that Ms. Contreras be permanently removed from election judge status.
Is there a motion, are there any questions?
No.
If none, is there a motion to remove Carol E. Contreras as a judge of election?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes and Ms. Contreras is removed.
The next judge that went to hearing was a Kathy A. Carlisle. And in this situation, the hearing officer, June Brown, had Although she found that Ms. Carlisle was in fact disruptive to the point of voters having to call her out in the precinct, she found that a mitigating circumstance of Ms. Carlisle's hearing, she felt that perhaps we should give her a second chance. Although I understand the hearing officer's compassion toward this individual, it was also discovered during the hearing that the reason that Ms. Carlisle became very loud and animated was when the other judge, who was a witness, Mr. Steve Isaacson, had basically pointed out to her that she was improperly and I would say illegally pre-initialing ballots. And that to me was the impetus of this loud disagreement. And where Ms. Carlisle is said to have a hearing difficulties, and she admitted to not bringing her hearing aids, at no point did she ask to go home and get them. And prior to him calling her out for this one particular procedure, she had not been considered loud. As a matter of fact, Mr. Isaacson, the witness, had in fact felt that they were getting along just fine. Because of that, and perhaps I don't want to sound unsympathetic, I'm actually empathetic to her. I've had hearing loss since I was a child. I do not believe that she overcame her burden, she being Ms. Carlisle, forgive me, at the hearing to have you go back against your initial recommendation for removal. And I would ask, and that was in conference with, again, Ms. Lewicki, who's the head of the Judges Department, that we both ask that you overrule Ms. Brown's recommendation and continue with your initial recommendation, or order that this individual be removed permanently as a judge of election.
Okay.
I have a process question. So in this particular case, the hearing officers made a recommendation that we overrule our previous ruling. Joan is saying the opposite. Is there some mechanism that the party is allowed to be able to make their case to us, since the case is being made on one side here?
We have written procedures as to how these post-removal hearings go, and it's with the hearing officer, the recommendation of the board. Now, this has been a duly noticed public meeting, and she's on the agenda. She would have had every right to be here today to address you during this public meeting.
But
she's
in
not
terms
here.
of the board's administrative code, there is not a specific mechanism for her to come back. Her reconsideration, her request for reconsideration, that is really her, in terms of due process, that is her right to come back, and for her protected property interest in her confirmation. You had made the initial recommendation, she's given notice, and her due process flows before the hearing officer. And I mean, Mr. Lasker and I have talked even about the way the board's administrative code is written right now, that it may behoove us to explore. It's been in place for quite some time now, that this may be something going forward that we all want to look at in terms of a change. But as it stands right now, administratively, once she had her motion to reconsider, that was really her opportunity.
No, I hear that. I'm just looking from a position of fairness, because she's had her opportunity, she made her case, the hearing officers made a recommendation, and now the board is basically saying, or staff is saying basically that, we want to overrule what the hearing officer did, and it just seems to me that there's something fundamentally, just in terms of process, a bit unfair when it's kind of like you had your opportunity to show up, right, to a citizen that's probably who's probably representing themselves, maybe not have the sophistication to understand those kind of nuances. because they're reading the recommendation saying, hey, they recommended overruled, maybe I don't need to show up. So to me, there's not a balance here. Without regard to the decision, the process seems to be unfair.
I do think, under constitutional tests for due process, we pass the test. But I also,
Yeah, I know. That's why I said fairness. I didn't say due process.
Yep. So I hear you loud and clear, and that's why Ms. Agnew and I are suggesting that we take a look at the current way that the policies are drafted and consider amending them for future election cycles. But for the time being, this is how the policy is written and how it works. And so she's had her opportunity with the hearing officer, and she's had an opportunity to be here today. And also,
I guess the point I'm making is she had her opportunity with the hearing officer. Again, I'm not speaking to the merits of the case, but she had her opportunity with the hearing officer. Hearing officer is recommending to be in favor of her, right? And so now we're coming back saying, no, don't do that. And so that seems to be where my challenge is.
right, and with
Right,
the,
because she did what she was supposed to do, and it came out this particular way, and now we're coming back saying, without her being present, be able to defend that position, to say, we should go the other direction.
Here is my concern about this right now, Commissioner. I absolutely understand what you're saying. I believe that the hearing officer has created confusion in this particular case, because she specifically, on her finding of facts, on paragraph 5, found that the behavior was, quote, disruptive and inappropriate. So she found, specifically in her statement of facts, in favor of what you had, when you had her removed initially. What I feel that the hearing officer did was rather go beyond the scope of her jurisdiction in this. I think that once she found that as a finding of fact, she did not have the authority to then enter into mitigating, a mitigating position. And that's where I am on this. In fairness, believe me, Commissioner,
Yeah.
when I'm sitting in there with 30 years of litigation experience against a judge, it is not a great feeling. I try to help handle myself. I do not go in and pummel them with cross-examination.
No, I get that.
But, so it is very difficult.
I guess the only point I'm making here, Joan, is that arguments are being made before us to overrule the hearing officer, who we committed this case to, right? And arguments are being made, and so I guess there's not, as we're sitting here, an opposite position, or it's no one in that opposite position being able to make the argument that this is here. And yes, she has the opportunity to show up, but again, I think a lot of leeway is given to pro se litigants. So, I mean, again, it's something I think we need to look at as we look at this, especially in this situation, which is probably a bit more unique than what we've had. But yeah.
If I may, as a point of fairness, I also feel that, and quite often we do not pay the individual for the day if they've been removed. In this scenario, with both of these individuals, based on the amount of time they were there that day, I would actually request that I be allowed to pay them both for the day, because they did in fact, I mean, I felt in one case we suffered or permitted one to work the whole day, and the other one was sitting there while the process was taking place, which is again internally our issue of streamlining the process. But if it does help at all in your sense of fairness, if I can request that she be paid for her services.
May I, before we get to that, I note the recommendation from the hearing officer mentioned that she be allowed to remain subject to the following conditions and attend a training. Do we still have training available that she could attend, or has she attended a training since this recommendation?
She would not have been allowed to train because during the whole process she's removed, and once a judge is removed, they're not allowed to reapply.
Yeah, are there still any training sessions available that she could attend?
I don't know. I know that the vacancy is, I have to go back to vote on the vacancy Thursday morning at 10:30.
Again, I tend to defer to the hearing officers unless I see an abuse of discretion. And I'm not sure I see an abuse of discretion here. I'm just thinking, if there are training sessions still to be had, she should be notified, and if she doesn't attend, then she has vacated the office.
Well, let me put my 2 cents in, because she arrived, according to the hearing officer's report, she arrived at approximately 4:50 a.m. And she had no problems until after 7 a.m. And that was due to the fact that another judge noticed that she was initialing several ballots without voters at the polling place. And at that time, the other judge informed her that that was against the rules. And that is when she became disruptive and extremely loud. So the fact that she claims she has a hearing problem, it doesn't really jive with what's happening here. She would have had a hearing problem from 4:50 a.m. The only time she became disruptive was when this another judge told her that she was doing something that violated our rules. So I tend to give Ms. Carlisle less credibility in terms of the mitigating factor, and tend to agree that she should be removed.
And if I may add to what the chairwoman has stated, that has been my concern, has been the pre-initialing of ballots. It's extremely common that an election judge may forget what the rules are on a particular issue, because there's a lot of rules for them to follow, and they do this once or twice a year. The question, I think, really is what happens once an issue has been identified? How do they take the coaching? And I'm concerned that someone who it's pointed out to them that they're doing something in violation of the rules, to get disruptive about it rather than just taking the coaching and moving on, is a concern, because to me that's behavior that's likely to continue in future elections. She might bring her hearing aids to the next election and be able to hear everything, but how is she going to respond to an election coordinator or another election judge who points out that she's doing something in violation of the rules?
But in response to that, though, Adam, I'm reading here that she's been a judge of elections for almost 2 decades. Is that right? So out of 20 years, we have a situation here where, she had a response that was inappropriate, clearly. But but the other side could be that there's not been a track record of, maybe it's a question of retraining. And maybe it's a question of, have we had a track record with this judge previously in the past 20 years? Do we have any issues?
Your Honor, or excuse me, Commissioner,
Yeah, don't put me in that category.
I
Too much, too much.
Once you put me up here, that's what just happened. I believe she may have in fact have been on the watch list in prior years.
Was that evidence that was entered into the record at all?
No. Because it wouldn't have been relevant for this case.
Again, the only person who witnessed her demeanor during, that we have to respond to or rely on is the hearing officer, who witnessed her demeanor during the hearing, her contriteness, her willingness, as says here, to follow the rules. I'm, at this point, leaning towards affirming the recommendation of the hearing officer, again, subject to those conditions.
And I feel eyes looking at me. I'm inclined to agree with my fellow commissioner, that I'm inclined to affirm the hearing officer.
Is there a motion to adopt the hearing officer's recommendation?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Joe. Next item on the agenda, under new business, is the approval of the Untitled subscription agreement for online poll worker training software.
Well, I will once again say thank you to Amanda and Sherry from the purchasing department, and also Audra Lewicki for helping pull this together. Untitled is the company that has developed and maintains our online poll worker training system. We've been using it for several years. All reports are good. It works well, and Audra is happy with it down in the judge's department. And so we'd like to request a ongoing agreement, a new agreement, to keep things moving in the right direction. We have for quite a while been entering one-year contracts and then coming back and doing one-year extensions with Untitled. And because of the fact that it's essentially a sole source procurement, you know, they've actually created the software, so we'd have to create brand new software if we were to go to a different company. I don't think there's a justification for the additional expense that would have, because, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So I have proposed a 2-year agreement with Untitled, just to cut down on the amount of contracts we have to approve on a regular basis. For something like this, I think it's appropriate. And the pricing is very similar to prior years. So,
Was this developed for us?
yes.
Okay.
This part of the training was, that we're using with them. I mean, they do training, online training all over the United States, but they developed this one for us.
Right, so I guess, with respect to your point, who owns it?
They do. This is a subscription agreement. So they've tailor-made a program, but it,
So I guess the question is, we paid them to create it, and then we don't own it?
yeah,
They house it on their equipment.
I hear you, but I guess the question I'm asking to the point about the 2-year versus the 1 year, if we paid them to create something, then we should own it, versus us paying them to create it and then licensing it from them. Because now we've enabled them to create it, and
Well-
then,
well, but they are in the business of training election judges through software. And so I think that they've tailor-made a program for us.
Did they tailor-make the program? I mean, did they do it from scratch, or was this like an
Yeah.
already
That they
off-the-shelf
adapted?
that they adopted and modified?
They modified it for our use.
okay, and that's different.
That's good.
Okay. Are there any further questions?
But I do think going forward, this relates to all of these kind of intellectual property kind of things that we should really closely evaluate, especially when we're getting involved in proprietary software, that we are very clear about who owns what.
Yes.
Okay.
And to that point, we have tried to do that with both our voter registration database, our online system for accessing military overseas votes. We own that software that has been developed, so that if they were to walk away, we
Okay.
just take over maintenance.
And our website as well. I recently reviewed that contract.
Okay.
That's work for
Good.
hire. We own the website.
Good.
Is there a motion? One last question. The agreement has 2 years, 2019 to 2020, with an extension for an optional year of 2021.
Which they've agreed to lock in the price for 2021 at the 2020 rate, should we, at the end of 2020, choose to extend for 1 more year.
Okay, but we're approving for 2019 and 2020.
Correct. We're, right, approving the contract now for 2 years. If there's going to be an extension, we will come back in front of the board for approval of the extension.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve an agreement, subscription agreement with SOE Software Corporation, doing business as Untitled, for the 2019 and 2020 calendar year, for an amount of $62,976 in total? For 2019, that would be $30,720. And for 2020, it is $32,256.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes and the agreement is approved. Next item is the adoption of the 2019 advisory referenda guidelines. Mr. Lasker?
So again, there have been no substantive amendments to the advisory referenda statutes since the last version of our guidelines was approved. So I have updated the names and dates of the elections and deadlines and so forth, and request your official adoption.
Okay, is there a motion to adopt?
I have one note, and I just saw this morning. So, in our other guidelines and, guidelines that we put together, we've always added, if you would, we've always added, in addition to the statement about you need to seek legal counsel, that we've added, here's where you can find legal counsel, going to the
Chicago Bar Association.
thank you very much.
Advisory,
So, yeah, so I would just say, I'm in favor of approving this, subject to that addition.
I think that's a great idea. I apologize for the oversight on that.
Is there a motion to approve the 2019 advisory referenda guidelines with the amendment as stated by Commissioner Swain?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes and the guidelines are approved. Next on the agenda is the legal report. Mr. Lasker?
Thank you. With great assistance from Trish and Trupti, we have 26 attorneys lined up for Election Central on Election Day at the hotline. Here at the board, just want to remind everybody that on Election Day, if you have any problems at the polls, please call 312-269-7870. We will have all kinds of staff members here available to answer questions from election judges, from voters, from anyone who needs to call, including these attorneys. We also have 3 working for the nursing home voting that's going on this weekend. We are at a point now where we have, I believe it's 43 potential electoral board hearing officers on the list. We have reached the threshold of where we'd have about 30% of, about a third of them would be new hearing officers for this upcoming cycle. I'd like to propose that we sort of limit it at that. We don't want to have too many first-timers. I will be communicating with you all individually offline to prepare for final approval on that. The hearings for the electoral board are scheduled to begin on December 10th. We'll have a training for the new hearing officers and a briefing for the returning ones prior to that. We still have no decision from Chicago Public Schools regarding their treatment of poll watchers for November 6th. I do believe that the delay in providing us an answer, I hope, is optimistic, that they won't be taking any drastic action this election, but I will keep you informed as I hear back from them.
When do we start issuing the credentials?
Well, credentials have been issued. For the poll watchers, we essentially issue blank credentials to the authorized campaigns and organizations, and they then, and the statute actually prohibits us expressly from requesting the names and information of poll watchers before they write it down on their blank credential and hand it in when they come to the polls. So there's no way we can provide a list at this point as to who's going to serve as polling watchers. We don't even know that till Election Day for the most part. But credentials are being issued. Then we're in the briefing process in the appellate court on the citywide referenda cases. Our response brief is due today. The reply brief is due Friday, so I think that it's not until after Friday that we're going to have our first opportunity for a decision from the appellate court on that. And then just one last, I had it on my list to inform you about the purchasing department. I will be working closely with them to make sure that all our procurements are moved forward in the right direction. The job posting, it has been posted. I don't remember the deadline for submitting applications, but it's coming up soon.
November 9th.
November 9th. And so we will be moving forward with finding a new procurement officer. And that's about it for legal department at the time.
One quick question. Going back to the schedule, so you said hearings will start for 2019 on December 10th, you said?
Yes.
Okay, and so, and the date for petitions being turned in will be
The last day is, I believe, November 26th.
Yep. Okay.
And
So
then there's a 5-day, well, technically a 7-day period of filing objections. The deadline for the
Right.
objections is the 3rd of December.
So I just a question around, because Thanksgiving's in that period, right?
Yes, right in the middle of the candidate
Right.
filing period.
Right, so that will be a day where people can turn in or cannot turn in?
They cannot.
They cannot,
We will
okay.
be closed.
So,
The Friday and Saturday and Sunday they will be.
Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, okay.
And Monday.
And Monday the
Right.
26th?
Monday's the last day, yeah.
Okay, and is there a statutory requirement about how many days that window has to be open?
No.
There's not, okay. That's just set by.
There's a requirement about staying open until 5 PM on the last day of the filing period.
Okay, so there's no other requirement about how many days it has to stay open and what have you, okay.
Correct.
Just curious.
Okay. Next item on the, oh, Mr. Laskers, anything else?
No, that's it. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is the financial reports. There, we have a balance sheet and voucher listing for the City of Chicago 2018 appropriation, number 18-08, dated October 30th, 2018, in the amount of $1,263,858.22. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next is a balance sheet and voucher listing for the County of Cook, 2018 appropriation, number 18-08, dated October 30th, 2018, in the amount of $2,511,065.77. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next item is public comment. I did not receive any requests for public comment. Mr. Lasker, is there a need for executive session?
Not today, thank you.
Not today, thank you. In that case, I will entertain a,
Madam Chair, could I just add one other
Yes.
item? The executive director from the EAC is coming to Chicago. He'd like to visit our office. He's the only one out of the board members who's not been here, so he asked
great.
if he could be here for this upcoming election.
we'd love to have him.
So I just want to let the board members know.
Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn until next Tuesday, November 6th at 7 a.m.?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes and we're adjourned. Thank you.